Picture this. You're on a dusty Texas highway, driving 6 hours from Austin to San Antonio, a $300 gift for your parents' 40th anniversary tucked beside you. You're ready to finally feel like you belong, to be seen by the family who's always looked past you. But when you arrive, they don't lead you to the glowing banquet hall with chandeliers and laughter. No, they seat you in a garage, cold concrete surrounded by storage boxes and strangers. That's what happened to me, Hannah Brooks. That night wasn't just a party. It was the moment my family's truth unraveled. I'm Hannah Brooks, a 34-year-old graphic designer from Austin, Texas. Growing up in San Antonio, I was the middle child, caught in the shadows of the Brooks family. My older sister Megan was the golden child, a pediatrician, perfect mom living 2 blocks from mom and dad. My younger brother Jake was the wild card, crashing dad's truck at 16, always forgiven with a shrug and a smile. Me. I was just Hannah. Decent grades, no trouble, but never enough to earn a spotlight. Every visit home reset me to that invisible kid, squeezed onto the edge of the Thanksgiving table, my career dismissed as that artsy job. I moved to Austin at 18, built a life I'm proud of, a cozy apartment, a cat named Gatsby, a creative director role. But back in San Antonio, I was still the afterthought, my promotions ignored while Megan's charity galas got applause. For my parents' 40th, I wanted to change that. I spent weeks finding a hand-blown glass sculpture, their wedding colors shimmering in its curves. I drove those 6 hours, heart full of hope, thinking this time they'd see me. But that night at the Riverwalk Pearl, with its glittering chandeliers and San Antonio's warm glow, became something else, a reckoning. It wasn't revenge in the way you might think, but a stand for my worth. It was the night I stopped accepting the shadows and demanded my place at the table. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, this story is for you. If you've ever felt invisible, like your family's love came with conditions, stay with me for this 55-minute journey. I'm sharing how I went from a garage seat to the head table, not just at that party, but in my family's heart. It's raw, it's real, and it's for anyone who's ever fought to be seen. Drop your story in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to your family? I read every single one, and I want to hear yours. Hit that subscribe button and the bell to join our Texas tribe, where we find strength in truth, from Austin to San Antonio and beyond. Share this video with someone who needs to know they're not alone, whether they're in the hill country or halfway across the world. Let's build a community that says no to being sidelined. Together we'll explore how one night, one moment, can change everything. So buckle up, y'all. This is my story of stepping out of the garage and into the light, and I'm honored to share it with you. Let's dive in and see how a Texas daughter claimed her worth. I'm Hannah Brooks, and I grew up in the heart of San Antonio, Texas, where family is supposed to be everything. Your rock, your roots, your home. But for me, being the middle child in the Brooks family meant living in the shadows. My older sister, Megan, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She was a straight-A student, homecoming queen, and now a pediatrician with a perfect husband, Chris, and 3 adorable kids. They lived just 2 blocks from my parents' house in Alamo Heights, close enough for mom to drop by with casseroles and praise. Megan's life was like a Texas sunrise. Bright, beautiful, and impossible to miss. Everyone celebrated her every move, from her medical school graduation to her kids' school plays. My younger brother, Jake, was the baby, the wild card who could crash dad's pickup at 16 and get away with it. Mom, Susan, would sigh, "Boys will be boys," and Dad, Richard, would just pat his shoulder, ready to bail him out of the next scrape. Jake was their project, always needing saving, always getting it. And then there was me, Hannah, stuck in the middle, not shiny enough to dazzle like Megan, not broken enough to demand attention like Jake. I got decent grades, stayed out of trouble, but somehow I was just there. Reliable, quiet Hannah, fading into the background of our San Antonio home. My parents loved me, I think, in their way, but their love always felt like it came with a hierarchy. Megan was the star, Jake the fixer-upper, and I was the wallpaper. Necessary but unnoticed. Growing up, family gatherings were a masterclass in invisibility. At barbecues, Mom would rave about Megan's potato salad, perfect as always, while I was sent to scrub the brisket trays. Dad would talk shop about his oil business, then turn to Jake's latest antics with a chuckle. Me. I'd get a pat on the shoulder and a vague, "How's that artsy job?" They never remembered I was a graphic designer, let alone a creative director leading a team in Austin. In Texas, family's supposed to be your backbone, like a longhorn standing tall. But for me, it felt like I was always reaching for a connection that wasn't there. I tried to earn their attention to be good enough, but no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't escape the shadow of being the middle child, the one who didn't quite fit. The moments that stung the most weren't loud or dramatic. They were quiet, subtle, like a Texas breeze you barely notice until it chills you to the bone. 2 Thanksgivings ago, I was 28, back in San Antonio for the holiday. The dining room was packed with relatives, the table groaning under turkey and pecan pie. But my seat, it was squeezed onto the rickety table extension, half my plate hanging off the edge, while Jake's girlfriend of 3 weeks got a prime spot next to Mom. I smiled through it, pretending it didn't hurt. Last Christmas was worse. Everyone got personalized stockings. Megan's embroidered with her kids' names, Jake stuffed with his favorite snacks. Mine, a cheap, glittery thing from a gas station, probably grabbed on the way home. When I pointed it out, Mom laughed. "Oh, Hannah, you're too sensitive." Dad just shrugged like it was no big deal. My career took the same hit. When I got promoted to creative director last year, leading a team of 7 in Austin, I called home, excited to share. Mom barely listened before saying, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Megan's son made the honor roll?" Dad didn't even acknowledge it, just asked about my drawing job. It wasn't malice, I told myself, just oversight. But those oversights piled up, each one a small cut. At a high school talent show, I had an art exhibit, my first real showcase. I waited hours, scanning the crowd for Mom and Dad. They never came. They were across town, cheering Jake's guitar performance like he was the next Willie Nelson. I stood alone, my paintings ignored, while their applause echoed in my head. In Texas, we're taught to keep the peace, to hold family close no matter what. But every ignored milestone, every dismissed achievement, felt like a message. You don't matter as much. I'd go back to Austin, to my cozy apartment and my cat, Gatsby, trying to shake it off. I'd built a life I was proud of, with friends who saw me for me. But those San Antonio visits, they reset me to that kid who was never enough, always on the outside looking in. Looking back, those years of being the invisible middle child shaped me in ways I didn't understand until much later. Every visit home to San Antonio was like stepping into a time machine, back to a version of myself I'd worked so hard to outgrow. I left for Austin at 18, eager to escape the shadow of Megan's perfection and Jake's chaos. In college I thrived, design classes, real friends, a chance to be Hannah, not just the Middlebrooks kid. I landed a job at a top ad agency, built a life with a cozy apartment, a rescue cat named Gatsby, and a career I loved. But no matter how far I went, San Antonio pulled me back to that feeling of being unseen. I kept showing up, hoping one day Mom and Dad would notice me, not as a placeholder, but as their daughter, with dreams and victories of her own. I'd sit at those family barbecues, watching Mom fuss over Megan's kids or Dad laugh off Jake's latest mess, and I'd wonder, what would it take to be enough? In Texas, we pride ourselves on family, on loyalty thicker than a summer heat wave. But what do you do when your family doesn't see you? I told myself their slights weren't intentional, that they loved me in their way. I'd smile, help with the dishes, and drive back to Austin carrying that ache. Therapy helped me name it. I wasn't just overlooked. I was erased, bit by bit, until I started believing I didn't deserve more. But deep down, a part of me refused to accept that. I kept calling, kept visiting, kept hoping. That's why I poured so much into my parents' 40th anniversary. 6 hours on the road, $300 on a glass sculpture, all for a chance to belong. In Texas, we're taught to hold family tight like a rope at a rodeo. But I was starting to see that holding on sometimes meant fighting for your place. That night at the Riverwalk, Pearl wasn't just about a seat. It was about every moment I'd been pushed aside, every time I'd swallowed my hurt. It was about realizing that my worth wasn't something I had to earn, but something I already had. And in that Texas night, I was ready to claim it. My parents' 40th anniversary felt like a chance to rewrite the story of our family, a moment to finally step out of the shadows. I'm Hannah Brooks, and I'd spent years as the invisible middle child in our San Antonio home, overlooked between my sister Megan's perfection and my brother Jake's chaos. But this milestone, 40 years of marriage, felt different, like a Texas sunrise promising a new day. I wanted to show up as the woman I'd become, not the kid they'd forgotten. Weeks before, I poured my heart into finding the perfect gift. I found a local Austin artist and commissioned a hand-blown glass sculpture, its curves shimmering with my parents' wedding colors, ivory and sage. It cost me $300, a stretch on my graphic designer's salary, but it was worth it. This wasn't just a gift. It was a symbol of my love, my effort, my hope that they'd see me. I drove 6 hours from Austin to San Antonio, the Texas highways stretching out like a lifeline to my past. In my hotel room the night before, I wrapped the sculpture in silver paper, tying it with a ribbon and a card that read, "Congratulations on 40 years." I'd chosen the hotel over staying at my parents' house, a boundary I'd set after years of being roped into chores while Megan and Jake breezed in at the last minute. I called my best friend, Allison, from a gas station in New Braunfels, my voice shaky with nerves. "I just want this time to be different," I told her, the hum of the interstate in the background. Allison, my rock since college, knew every scar from my family's slights. "You're Hannah Brooks, creative director," she said. "You've built a life you love. Show them who you are." Her words lit a spark in me. I'd been in therapy, working to shed the old patterns of seeking approval. This time I told myself I'd show up authentically. Proud, capable, worthy. In Texas, we hold family close like a rope at a rodeo, but I was tired of being the one left holding the slack. That 6-hour drive gave me time to rehearse how I'd walk into that party, head high, ready to claim my place. I didn't know then that the night would break my heart open, that it would be less about celebration and more about a reckoning. Not revenge in a cruel sense, but a stand for my worth under the Texas stars. I arrived at the Riverwalk Pearl, San Antonio's most elegant venue, 30 minutes early. The Riverwalk sparkled outside, its lights dancing on the water, a Texas gem that made every occasion feel grand. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in white linen, set for my parents' 40th anniversary. I'd splurged on a navy blue cocktail dress, its fabric hugging my frame, my chestnut hair styled in loose waves. I'd even stopped by a makeup counter that morning, wanting every detail to be perfect, to reflect the woman I'd become in Austin. The gift bag, padded with tissue to protect the delicate glass sculpture, felt heavy with meaning in my hands. I spotted my mom, Susan, immediately, a vision in a silver sequined dress, directing the staff like a general on a hill country ranch. "Hannah, you made it," she said, air kissing near my cheek to avoid smudging her lipstick. "No, how was your drive?" Or, "You look beautiful. Just, can you fix the centerpieces? They're a bit sparse." Classic Susan Brooks, always assigning tasks before saying hello. I swallowed the familiar sting and adjusted the flowers, their petals already perfect, while Susan buzzed around, oblivious. I overheard her bragging to a guest about Megan's latest charity gala, her voice bright with pride. My recent promotion to creative director, leading a team of 7, not a word. It hurt, but I pushed it down, telling myself tonight would be different. I greeted relatives as they arrived. Megan with her catalog-perfect family, her husband Chris and their 3 kids, all dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Susan squealed, hugging each grandchild, fawning over Megan's dress. Then came Aunt Meredith, always quick to dismiss my career with a "computers do all the work, don't they?" My cousin Tyler slipped in, the one who'd borrowed $1,000 from my parents and never paid it back. Yet there he was, welcomed like a prodigal son. Jake arrived last, surprisingly sharp in a fitted suit, fresh from a job at Dad's oil company. Susan beamed at him too. I kept busy, helping with last-minute tasks, clinging to the hope that this night would finally bridge the gap between me and my family. In Texas, we say family's your anchor, but I was starting to feel like I was drifting alone. As the party's start time neared, I looked for my place card among the elegant tables in the main hall. Nothing. I approached Mom, who was checking her clipboard, all business. "Where am I sitting?" I asked, my voice steady despite the unease creeping in. She barely looked up. "Oh, Hannah, we had to make some adjustments. You're in the side room by the kitchen." The side room. I followed her through a service door, my heels clicking on the tile, the gift bag still in my hand. She led me to what wasn't a room at all. It was a garage, dressed up with a white tablecloth over a folding table, mismatched chairs, and a single vase of leftover flowers. The concrete floor peeked out from under a too small rug, and boxes of wine were stacked in a corner, barely hidden by a screen. "Here we are," Susan said brightly, as if she'd shown me to a penthouse suite. "The servers will come through, so don't worry." She was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone in that stark space, the laughter from the main hall echoing through the walls. I stood frozen, the weight of the $300 gift pulling at my arm. This wasn't just a seating mistake. It was my place in the family laid bare. I could see the Riverwalk's glow outside, San Antonio alive with celebration. But in here, it was just me, the concrete, and the truth. I pulled out my phone and texted Allison. "They put me in the garage. Everyone else is in the main room." Her reply was instant. "What the hell? That's messed up." In Texas, we're taught to keep the peace, to smile through the hurt. But standing in that garage, I felt something shift, a crack in the dam I'd built to hold back years of being unseen. This wasn't about revenge, not yet, but about realizing I deserved more than a seat among the shadows. Standing in that garage at the Riverwalk Pearl, the weight of my $300 gift bag pulling at my arm, I felt the truth of my place in the Brooks family hit me like a Texas summer storm. I'd driven 6 hours from Austin to San Antonio, hoping my parents' 40th anniversary would be the moment they finally saw me. Hannah, their middle child, not just the invisible gap between Megan's perfection and Jake's chaos. But there I was, in a glorified storage room, surrounded by a folding table, mismatched chairs, and a single vase of wilted flowers. The concrete floor peeked out from under a rug that didn't quite fit, and boxes of wine loomed in the corner, barely hidden by a flimsy screen. Through the service door, I could hear the main hall buzzing, laughter, clinking glasses, the life of the party I'd poured my heart into joining. I stepped to the doorway, my navy dress catching the harsh light, and looked out. There they were at the head table. Mom, Susan, glowing in her sequin dress. Dad, Richard, beaming with pride. Megan, her perfect family by her side. Jake, grinning like he owned the place. Even my cousin Tyler, who'd borrowed $1,000 from my parents and never paid it back, sat there, sipping champagne from a crystal flute. Everyone who mattered to them was in that glittering room. Everyone except me, their own daughter. I scanned the tables. Aunts, uncles, even my parents' neighbors of 20 years had prime spots. But me. I was out here, with the leftovers and the strangers. My chest tightened like a rope pulled too taut at a Texas rodeo. This wasn't a seating mix-up. It was my life in the Brooks family, laid bare on a concrete floor. I pulled a childhood photo from my purse. One of me at 10, squished between Megan and Jake, smiling but already fading. That image burned in my mind, a snapshot of every moment I'd been pushed aside. In Texas, we're taught family is your anchor, your longhorn herd standing strong. But standing there, I saw it clearly. I was the one left outside the circle, and it wasn't an accident. The Riverwalk's lights twinkled outside, San Antonio alive with celebration. But in that garage, I was alone with a truth I could no longer ignore. When Mom bustled back into the garage a few minutes later, her clipboard clutched like a shield, I couldn't stay silent. My voice was low, steady, but trembling with years of unspoken hurt. "Mom," I said, "why am I out here when everyone else is in there? Even Tyler, who took $1,000 from you, gets a seat at the main table." Susan's expression tightened, her eyes narrowing just enough to betray her discomfort before she smoothed it into a practiced smile. "Hannah, don't be dramatic," she said, her voice sharp as a Texas spur. "It's just space constraints." The seating chart was a nightmare. Megan worked hours on it. I looked past her through the service door, where I could see empty chairs in the main hall, their cushions untouched under the chandelier's glow. "Space constraints," said my tone sharper now. "There are empty seats right there, Mom. I'm your daughter. How am I the only one out here?" She glanced at her watch, impatient, as if my pain was an inconvenience. "We had to consider relationships, conversations, who'd fit where," she said. "The Johnsons are bringing their exchange student, and Dad's golf buddies are coming. You'll be fine out here." Her words cut deeper than any knife. Tyler, the family thief, was family enough for the main room, but me? I was relegated to this concrete exile with strangers. I pressed harder, my voice rising just enough to echo in the empty space. "You forgave Tyler for stealing, but your own daughter gets sent to the garage? What am I to you, Mom?" Susan's smile faltered, but she doubled down. "You're making a scene, Hannah. We had to make tough choices." I shook my head, the ache in my chest turning to fire. "Tough choices? Or just the same choice you've always made, to put me last?" She didn't answer, just turned away, muttering about the caterers needing direction. As she walked back to the main hall, I saw a San Antonio councilman raise a glass to her, oblivious to the daughter she'd left behind. In Texas, we're taught to keep the peace, to hold family above all. But in that moment, I knew peace wasn't worth my erasure. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet, but about facing a truth I'd dodged for 34 years. I sank into one of the mismatched chairs, the gift bag heavy in my lap, and stared at the concrete floor. The laughter from the main hall drifted through the walls, each note a reminder of my exclusion. This garage wasn't just a room, it was a mirror, reflecting every moment I'd been sidelined in the Brooks family. Every Thanksgiving corner seat, every ignored promotion, every gas station Christmas stocking. It all led to this. I pulled out my phone and texted Allison, my best friend, my anchor in Austin. "They put me in the garage," I wrote, my fingers shaking. "Literally everyone else is in the main room." Her reply was instant. "What the actual hell? That's beyond messed up. What are you gonna do?" I didn't know yet, but her words lit a spark. I thought about every Texas family barbecue where I'd smiled through the slights, every time I told myself it was just how families worked. In Texas, we're raised to keep the family brand strong, like a ranch standing proud. But what do you do when your family brands you as the outsider? I looked at the gift bag, the $300 sculpture inside, chosen with such care. It was meant to show my love, but now it felt like a plea for a place I'd never been given. The dam I'd built to hold back years of hurt was cracking, and I could feel the flood coming. This wasn't about revenge in the cruel sense, but about reclaiming something I'd lost. My right to be seen. The Riverwalk's glow flickered outside, a San Antonio night alive with possibility. But in that garage, I was on the edge of a choice that would change everything. I couldn't stay in that garage any longer, surrounded by the cold concrete and the weight of my family's disregard. My whole life, I'd been the invisible middle child. Hannah Brooks, lost between Megan's golden glow and Jake's forgiven chaos. But that night, at my parents' 40th anniversary party in San Antonio's Riverwalk Pearl, something snapped. The $300 glass sculpture I'd brought, wrapped in silver paper, sat heavy in my hands, a symbol of my hope to be seen. I'd driven 6 hours from Austin, rehearsed my confidence, but being seated in a storage room with strangers while my family laughed under chandeliers in the main hall? That was the final cut, deeper than any Texas canyon. I set the gift bag down on the folding table, my navy dress catching the harsh fluorescent light, and walked toward the service door. My heels clicked on the tile, each step a drumbeat of resolve. I wasn't just walking into the main hall. I was walking into 34 years of being overlooked, ready to face it head-on. The Riverwalk's glow filtered through the windows, San Antonio's heartbeat pulsing outside. But inside me, a storm was brewing. I pushed open the door, and the main hall unfolded before me. white linen tables, crystal flutes clinking, and my family at the head table, basking in the spotlight. My dad, Richard, was mid-speech, his voice warm with pride as he toasted to family, the heart of everything. The irony burned. I stood across from them, my silhouette framed against the service door, and every head turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Cousins, aunts, even a San Antonio councilman who'd known my parents for decades. My mom, Susan, froze, her sequin dress catching the chandelier light. Megan, perfect as ever with her husband Chris and their kids, looked confused. Jake, in his surprisingly sharp suit, raised an eyebrow. My cousin Tyler, who'd taken $1,000 from my parents without repaying, shifted uncomfortably, his champagne glass suddenly heavy. The room went quiet, the kind of silence that feels louder than a Texas thunderstorm. I didn't plan to speak, but the words came anyway, steady and raw. "Everything's not all right, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through his speech like a blade. "You're talking about family, but I'm out there in the garage. Not with you, not with family, but with storage boxes and strangers." The air thickened, every eye locked on me. This wasn't revenge in the cruel sense, but a reckoning. A Texas-sized stand for my worth, born from years of being pushed to the edges. I felt the weight of the moment, like standing on a hill country cliff, knowing one step could change everything. The silence in the Riverwalk Pearl's main hall didn't last. My mom, Susan, recovered first, her face flushing under her perfect makeup. "Hannah, you're making a scene," she hissed, her voice sharp as a San Antonio spur, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. I laughed, but there was no humor in it, just the ache of 34 years spilling out. "Making a scene," I said, stepping closer to the head table. "You seated your own daughter in a garage, Mom, while Tyler, who took $1,000 from you and never paid it back, gets a crystal flute and a prime spot. If anyone's making a scene, it's you." The councilman at a nearby table dropped his fork, the clatter echoing. Susan's eyes darted to the guests, her smile tight, like she could will the moment away. "It was space constraints," she said, her voice clipped. "Megan worked hours on the seating chart. It wasn't easy." I glanced at Megan, who looked down, her perfect composure cracking. "There are empty chairs right here," I said, pointing to the untouched seats in the main hall, their cushions mocking her excuse. "I'm your daughter, Mom. I drove 6 hours, spent $300 on a gift, and you put me with the overflow." My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. "This isn't just tonight. It's every Thanksgiving I was squeezed onto the table extension. It's the gas station Christmas stocking while everyone else got embroidered ones. It's you dismissing my promotion to creative director while you brag about Megan's charity galas." Dad, Richard, looked stunned, his glass frozen halfway to his lips. "Hannah, I didn't know you were back there," he said, his voice soft like he was seeing me for the first time. Jake jumped in, his tone defensive. "It's just one night, Hannah. Chill." I turned to him, the fire in my chest flaring. "One night. It's been 34 years, Jake. You got away with crashing Dad's truck, but I can't even get a seat at my own family's table." Megan finally spoke, her voice small. "I did the seating chart," she admitted. "I thought you'd want space, Hannah." "Base." The word hit like a slap. "I didn't need space," I said. "I needed my family to see me." The room was a blur of faces now. Relatives, neighbors, strangers, all witnesses to this raw unraveling. In Texas, we're taught to keep family matters private, to hold the line like a rancher guarding the herd. But I was done hiding. This wasn't about tearing them down. It was about claiming my place, about demanding the respect I'd earned under the wide Texas sky. The weight of my words hung in the air, but Susan wasn't backing down. "If you can't behave, Hannah, just leave," she said, her voice cold, her eyes avoiding mine. I looked at her, at Dad's stunned face, at Megan's guilt, at Jake's discomfort, and I knew staying wouldn't fix this. Not tonight. I set the gift bag on the head table, the $300 glass sculpture inside a silent testament to the love I'd tried to give. 40 years of marriage is something to celebrate, I said, my voice steady now, though my heart was breaking. I hope the next 40 bring more compassion, because I'm done begging for a seat. I turned, my heels echoing as I walked toward the exit, the Riverwalk stars visible through the windows, brighter than the chandeliers. Enjoy the main room, I called over my shoulder. The garage service is great despite the vibe. Each step felt like shedding a layer of the girl who'd accepted being unseen. This wasn't revenge in the way of spite or cruelty. It was liberation, a Texas-sized declaration of my worth. As I crossed the threshold, the San Antonio night wrapped around me, vast and alive. I'd come to this party hoping to belong, but I was leaving with something greater. The truth that my value didn't depend on their approval. The stars above seemed to nod, as if the Texas sky itself was cheering me on. The San Antonio night wrapped around me as I stepped out of the Riverwalk Pearl, the stars above brighter than the chandeliers I'd left behind. I just walked away from my parents' 40th anniversary party, my heart pounding from the confrontation that had spilled out in front of everyone. Mom, Susan, Dad, Richard, my sister, Megan, my brother, Jake, even the San Antonio councilman sipping champagne. I told them the truth. That seating me in the garage wasn't just a mistake, but a reflection of 34 years of being the invisible middle child in the Brooks family. My navy dress caught the breeze as I crossed the parking lot. The $300 glass sculpture I'd left on the head table, a final gesture of love and defiance. I was done begging for a seat. Done pretending it didn't hurt. But before I could reach my car, I heard footsteps. Quick, uneven. Not the steady rhythm of a Texas two-step, but the scramble of someone chasing. Hannah! It was Dad. His voice rough with urgency, cutting through the humid night air. I turned, and there he was, Richard Brooks, his tie loosened. His face flushed from running in his dress shoes. So out of place in this gravel lot. What the hell was that back there? He asked, his breath uneven, his eyes searching mine. I stood my ground, the Riverwalk's lights flickering in the distance, a reminder of the celebration I'd been excluded from. The disruption's not the issue, Dad, I said, my voice low but steady, carrying the weight of every overlooked moment. It's that your daughter was seated in a garage while everyone else, Megan, Jake, even Tyler, who took $1,000 from you, got the main room. He looked like I'd slapped him, his shoulders sagging under his tailored jacket. Susan's silhouette appeared in the doorway of the venue, framed by the glow of the Riverwalk, watching us but staying back, her sequin dress a distant shimmer. In Texas, we're taught to keep family fights behind closed doors, to hold the herd together. But I'd already broken that rule, and there was no going back. This wasn't revenge in a cruel sense. It was a stand, a Texas-sized demand for the respect I'd been denied for too long. Dad ran a hand through his graying hair, his eyes darting to the ground, then back to me. The parking lot was quiet, save for the hum of San Antonio's nightlife in the distance, a world away from this raw moment. Hannah, I swear I didn't know you were in the garage, he said. His voice softer now, cracking with something like regret. Your mom told me you were helping with the setup, that you'd join us later. I shook my head, the ache in my chest flaring. You didn't know because you never looked, Dad. You never saw me. Not at Thanksgiving when I was pushed to the table's edge. Not when I got a gas station stocking while Megan and Jake got embroidered ones. Not when I told you about my promotion to creative director. His face crumpled like a Texas oak bending in a storm. He admitted he'd been distracted, consumed by his oil business in San Antonio, always chasing the next deal. I thought you were fine, he said. You're so strong, Hannah, out there in Austin, building your life. I swallowed hard, my voice steady but heavy. Strength doesn't mean I don't need my family, Dad. It doesn't mean I can keep being invisible. He looked away, toward the Riverwalk's glow, and his voice dropped. Your mom. She grew up with a mother who favored her sister. Maybe that's why she's so hard on you, why she leans toward Megan and Jake. It's not right, but it's how she learned. I nodded, understanding but not excusing. That explains it, Dad, but it doesn't make it okay. I'm your daughter too. He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw something new. Guilt, yes, but also a flicker of pride. I'm sorry, Hannah, he said, his voice breaking. I never wanted you to feel this way. In Texas, apologies are rare, like rain in a drought, but his words felt real, like a crack in the wall I'd always faced. This wasn't about tearing my family down. It was about building something new, something honest, under the wide Texas sky. Dad stepped closer, his hand hovering like he wanted to reach out but didn't know how. "Come back inside, Hannah," he said, his voice raw but earnest. "Be seen. You belong at that table, not out here." I hesitated, the San Antonio stars above us bright and unyielding, like a challenge to decide who I'd be in this moment. My friend Allison's words echoed in my head. "You're not that overlooked kid anymore." She was right. I'd built a life in Austin, a career, a home with my cat, Gatsby, a strength I'd earned. But standing in that parking lot, I realized belonging wasn't about earning their approval. It was about claiming my place. "I'll come back," I said finally, my voice steady. "But I'm not pretending everything's fine. Things need to change." Dad nodded, his eyes holding mine. "It's time for truth in this family," he said, and I saw a resolve in him I hadn't seen before. We turned back toward the Riverwalk Pearl, the Texas night stretching vast around us. This wasn't revenge, not the kind that leaves scars, but a reckoning, a step toward a family that might finally see me. As we walked, I felt the weight of 34 years lift, just a little, like a breeze carrying the promise of a new day. Walking back into the Riverwalk Pearl with my dad, Richard, felt like stepping onto a new frontier, the San Antonio night still humming with stars outside. I just confronted my family. Mom, Susan, my sister, Megan, my brother, Jake, about seating me in the garage at their 40th anniversary party, a raw exposure of 34 years as the invisible middle child in the Brooks family. My heart was still racing from laying it all bare, but Dad's plea to return, to be seen, carried a weight I couldn't ignore. As we crossed the threshold, the main hall's chandeliers cast a softer glow, the air thick with the aftermath of my words. Susan stood near the head table, her sequin dress catching the light, her face a mix of tension and resignation. She didn't meet my eyes, but she gestured to a server, who hurried to add a chair between Dad and Jake. I sat, the linen napkin stiff in my hands, feeling every guest's gaze. Cousins, aunts, even a San Antonio neighbor who'd whispered, "Good for you, Hannah," as I passed. The silence was heavy, like a Texas summer dusk, but it was a start. Megan leaned toward me, her voice low, almost fragile. "I'm sorry, Hannah," she said. "I benefited from the favoritism, and I didn't see how it hurt you." Her admission caught me off guard. Perfect Megan, the golden child, owning her part. Jake shifted in his seat, his usual grin gone. "I didn't realize Mom treated you differently," he said, his words halting. I was too caught up in my own mess. Their apologies weren't grand gestures, but they were cracks in the wall I'd faced for years. Susan didn't speak, but her rearranging the seats was a concession, however reluctant. A local San Antonio couple, friends of my parents, nodded at me from across the room, their quiet support like a breeze through the hill country. This wasn't the full healing I dreamed of, but it was real, a step toward a family that might finally see me. In Texas, we hold family like a lifeline, but I'd learned that night that lifelines can change, can stretch to include those left out. My stand wasn't revenge. It was a reckoning, a claim to my worth under the chandelier's light. The night at the Riverwalk Pearl didn't erase 34 years of being the overlooked middle child, but it planted a seed, one that grew in the months that followed. Back in Austin, I returned to my life. My cozy apartment, my cat, Gatsby, my role as creative director, but I carried a new strength, forged in that San Antonio garage. Dad was the first to show a shift. He drove up to Austin a month later, his pickup kicking up dust on my street. Over coffee at a local Tex-Mex joint, he asked about my work, really listened as I described my latest campaign. It was the first time he'd seen my career as more than artsy. Mom, Susan, was slower to change, her pride as stubborn as a Texas Longhorn. But one day, a card arrived in my mailbox, her handwriting neat. "Congratulations on your big client win, Hannah." No apology, but an acknowledgement, the first she'd ever sent for my achievements. It felt like a small crack in her armor, a sign she was trying. Megan invited me to her kids' soccer game in San Antonio, and I went, hosting them later at my Austin loft for a barbecue. We laughed over brisket and queso, their small hands grabbing my sketchbooks, a new bond forming under the Texas sun. Jake called too, asking for advice on a job, a rare moment of him seeing me as more than the quiet sister. At Dad's birthday a few months later, I arrived at their Alamo Heights home, bracing for the old patterns. But my place card was at Dad's right, a quiet nod from Susan, her eyes softer than before. A letter came from her later, not quite an apology but close, hinting at regret for the years she'd missed me. In Texas, family is your roots, deep and unyielding, but I learned roots can shift, grow to hold everyone. My stand that night wasn't about tearing my family down. It was about rebuilding, about demanding a place at the table, not the garage. The journey wasn't over, but under the wide Texas sky, I saw a family starting to change, and a version of myself who'd finally claimed her worth. That night in the garage at the Riverwalk Pearl, under the San Antonio stars, changed me forever. I'm Hannah Brooks, and for 34 years, I was the invisible middle child, overshadowed by Megan's perfection and Jake's chaos, always hoping my parents, Susan and Richard, would see my worth. When they seated me in a concrete room with strangers at their 40th anniversary, it wasn't just a slight. It was a mirror, reflecting every moment I'd been pushed aside. But standing up, walking into that chandelier-lit hall, and speaking my truth wasn't about revenge in the cruel sense. It was a reckoning, a Texas-sized claim to my place at the table. I learned my worth isn't tied to my family's approval. It's inherent, as unyielding as a longhorn in a hill country storm. That night taught me that speaking up, even when your voice shakes, is never selfish. It's necessary. If you're feeling sidelined, whether in a family or a small Texas town, know this. You deserve to be seen not for what you do but for who you are. In Texas, we hold family like a lifeline, but sometimes you have to fight for your spot in it like a rancher staking a claim. My stand didn't fix everything. Mom's still stubborn and old habits linger, but it started something. Dad's visits, Megan's apologies, Jake's calls, even Mom's hesitant card showed a family bending, like a mesquite tree in the wind. I'm not the overlooked kid anymore. I'm Hannah, creative director, daughter, and a woman who knows her value under the wide Texas sky. If you've ever felt like you're sitting in life's garage, this story's for you. Have you had to stand up to your family to demand your place? Drop your story in the comments. I read everyone, and I want to hear yours, whether you're in Austin, San Antonio, or beyond. Hit subscribe and that bell to join our Texas tribe, where we share truths and find strength, from the hill country to the Gulf Coast. Share this video with someone who needs to know they're not alone, someone who's ready to claim their seat at the table. My journey that night wasn't about tearing my family down. It was about building a new kind of belonging, one where I'm seen. Let's keep this going, y'all. Your voice matters, and together we can create a community that says no to being sidelined. Thank you for being here, for listening to my story. You deserve more than the garage. You deserve the whole damn table. Let's stand tall under the Texas stars and keep fighting for our worth.